Welcome everybody to Changing Up the Hip Hop Guards podcast. I'm your host, the journalist Sincere. That's my co-host, Uncle E. And tonight we have the pleasure of speaking with world-renowned photographer T. Eric Monroe. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me with you all here. I truly appreciate the opportunity to speak with you guys.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about a lot of great things you have going on in 2023 and what you have coming up. But before we do that, let's take a journey back and get to know you a little bit about your background. For those who may not know you, where exactly were you born and raised?
I was born in Syracuse, New York, upstate New York, but I was raised in central Jersey, in Somerset, right next to New Brunswick. So I'm sort of where I live now, halfway between New Brunswick and Princeton University. So kind of out in the suburbs of Jersey, but close enough to New York to be a part of the mix, but also come home and live the real world.
Absolutely. Early on, teenage years, what were some of your hobbies? What were you into early on?
Teenage years, skateboarding, hanging out with my friends, mixed kind of crew of people, Boy Scouts, photography was always a hobby of mine. I never took it as a profession. It was just something that I always did. So I had a mixed background. I live in a very diverse area. I can't say it's like a mini New York, but there's so many cultures where I live at, like everyone from every kind of background. So it was like such a beautiful melting pot that I didn't realize it was such a diverse place versus going to other places. And it's sort of like just salt and pepper. There's no garlic, there's no oregano, there's no sazon. You know what I mean?
Right.
Ain't no seasoning.
Right.
So it's like I was very fortunate looking back at it of where I grew up, because it provided so much and so much rich culture on all fronts that allowed me just to stay open and just to be around people and and blend in with people very easily.
What was some of the music that was around you at that time? What were you listening to early on?
I mean, I came up listening. I can't say this. I definitely listened to like the early hip hop when it came out, soul music, classic rock music, because it was just a part of what was on the radio. Like radio, back in the day, just played a mix of stuff, and then urban radio really started, to emerge here in the New York area, like with WBLS or Kiss FM. But you also listen to Hot 97 or Q1043 classic rock. So it was a blended ear of everything. And then even my later teens, another group of kids I was hanging out with during the skateboard crowd were into the punk rock scene. So I gravitated into that because to me, the punk rock scene was no different than any other underground scene, because it was just kids wanting to have fun, express themselves. And it was just like a good motley crew. Like no one was getting in trouble, so especially being a skater, it was just part of the mix of everyone. So it was a fun environment of listening to so many things and also being educated about music, because the same punk rock crowd is the one that helped me to understand reggae music more, dub and ska music, which I didn't know was a part of Black music's culture, but they, put me onto it.
Now, during that time, you're talking about the punk rock music, hip hop and everything. And like you said, there was such a fusion, right?
Yes.
Because you had kids that were into punk rock, but that maybe did graffiti.
Yeah, big time.
Right? And then you had like kids that went to hip hop, but that sometimes even would dress certain ways that was in the punk rock community.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, can you talk a little bit about that type of inclusion? You know what I mean? Between the kids. Because also, I'm sure a lot of people know the history as far as like when hip hop came from the Bronx down to downtown and
right,
mixed with that scene. And then now you had the artsy and the art galleries. And, that was a pretty big, not big, I should say a pretty important moment.
Right.
I think in hip hop culture.
Yeah, I think, it was definitely a youthful expression. So it didn't matter if you were Black, white, hip hop, punk. It was a part of the youthful expression. And if you were into art, doing graffiti was a way that you could really put your work up there and get loose with it. It didn't matter if you were Puerto Rican or Irish or whatever. It was about creating beautiful art on a wall for others to see, whether it's, being chased by the cops or just writing your tag just to be seen or just to get up. It was just a part of the fun of youth, of sharing artwork. And it's funny that you mentioned, like talking about the punk kids getting into graffiti as well as the hip hop kids, because I didn't think of it in segregated moments. It was just those who were creative wanted to be creative, and it was the same kids, the creative kids that were making, whether it was the punk rock T-shirts for the band or making the airbrush, graffiti things for everyone because airbrushing was in. You can get a bubble, whatever of the air. So it's funny, like really thinking about it now, the youthful expression and the art expression, of our youth, and wanting not necessarily to just wanting to share what your skills were, and because you were so young doing it, no one questioned you about why you were doing it. It was just a part of your expression.
Right. And like you said, at the time we were, it was the norm, right? It was just normal.
Yes.
You came outside, you might be hanging out with this one, this kid's skateboarding, and next thing you know, you're at night hanging out with this other kid that's breakdancing, what I mean, or whatever.
Right.
And it was just normal.
Yes.
So to me now, in your opinion, throughout the different eras, we've always talked about, for example, racism or segregation, separating different things. Would you agree that hip hop, punk, those different cultures are probably one of the only cultures that were able to embrace everybody as one without looking at, not caring about the color, not caring about male, female, because there was a lot of females, a lot of women that were skateboarding, dancing, doing graffiti, all kind of stuff.
Right.
Do you think it's been one of the only cultures that has been able to kind of pull that off?
From my vantage point, I'm going to say yes, because for me, when it comes to like dealing with racism or racism head on, it was the punk rock kids that were really dealing with racism head on. I remember, when I first started hanging out with the punk rock kids, people were like, oh, watch out for the skinheads and this and that.
Right.
And I didn't know any of the skinhead stuff or the myths behind it. But I remember one thing that a lot of the punk rock kids stood up for was being against racism, against Nazism, against this, against that. And like we would go to shows, and like if there was Nazi kids, they were the ones in the parking lot fighting like it was nobody's business. And it tripped me out, because it's like from my upbringing as black young man in the suburbs, like I'm not going out and fighting against a racist person. I'm just gonna let it be what it is. Like, you call me whatever, all right, I'm gonna live to see another day because I can walk away. Whereas these cats, these non-black cats, were really getting into it in the parking lot over people who were racist or felt that they could call someone this or treat somebody like that. Like, these kids got down for theirs, like in no uncertain terms, just with their fists. Like, it was no guns, they were just getting loose with their fists. And it's like that level of respect that I had for him, like, yo, you got my back like that. You're looking out, like, you have no reason to have to stand up for a black man or Puerto Rican or whatever, but you're doing it because you know it's right, and it shocked me in so many ways, and it made me have so much more respect for my friends at a completely different level that hip hop couldn't stand up for itself in such the same way, you know what I mean, in so many ways.
And just to expand on that, I remember back in the late 90s here in Indiana, like going to the record store and seeing this skinhead, the typical, the boots, the leather, the skinhead. But what freaked me out is the guy had a Public Enemy tattoo.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
Oh, that's cool.
Like, yeah, man, like just one of those moments where it was like, okay, hip hop has really, I mean, it embraces all cultures, and
absolutely,
this skinhead just, he gravitated toward Public Enemy, and this was, Fear of a Black Planet era. What I mean? Like, it was just crazy.
It's wild to think about it in terms of obviously just pure race, but the thing about with the punk rock crowd and just hip hop period, the way that it stood up for something, like Public Enemy stood for something, BDP stood for something, and a lot of my punk rock friends, they were into hip hop because it was part of our youth culture, but they stood firmly around something like Public Enemy because it stood up for something. It wasn't just some party bullshit, like them standing up for a message of being about something. Like we in hip hop say, oh yeah, we're about this, but when push comes to shove, are you really? And I'm not saying be violent, but like where's your conviction of really trying to stand up for yourself or your culture or what the youth are really speaking about or trying to be about in a positive way, and the punk culture, that whole subculture, like it just stood for so much. And at the same time, it was sad because, you know, like you were saying, when you saw a skinhead with the overall, not the overalls, I forgot what you
The
call
leather jackets and
the leather jackets, you know,
The
the whole,
spikes.
the
Yeah.
combat
yeah, the
boots.
whole kit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, but I think if we look back at the era of like Melly Mel and Bambaataa, like what you were saying before, like when
Right.
everybody's coming down from the Bronx to the downtown and the mixture of cultures, you found out you guys were about the same thing, and you adopted some of their dress or some of their swag or some of their style because more and more that you got into not only punk and listening to other music. Like, let's think about Queen, you know what I mean? Like the Big Beat, you know what I mean? Or, you know, We Will Rock You, or some of their heavy stuff. Like the bottom bass is what we listened to in hip hop. Like that's what was moving us in hip hop. You know, was that bottom bass sound. You know, so
Right.
it's very similar in a lot of ways. And it was funny to me. I would go to a lot of punk rock shows, and I couldn't understand what the hell they were saying. Like they were just too fast on the mic with it. But the only thing I could follow was like if a band had a good bass line or whatever, a good drummer, then I could feel it. Otherwise, like I just didn't get it. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't feel the music. I couldn't sing along. But I was happy that my friends were having fun, and I was there just to hang out in a different scene and environment and embrace it and become a part of it as well.
Right. Were you able to ever see Bad Brains in concert?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. And again, it was one of the things where I wish I knew more about a lot more punk rock when I got into it, because not only was Bad Brains ahead of their time, but there was other black artists involved in the punk scene that I didn't know, you know, and that I found out about later, like people like Chuck Treese out of Pennsylvania, who was an underdog, and Chuck Treese did so much soundtrack work with so many different bands. Like hell, he can even tell you stories about doing studio sessions with Billy Joel or this person or that person because he's so musically inclined, you know. But I wish I would have known more of the black players in punk rock coming up early on.
Right.
Quick question, and you know, forgive us if we kind of jump around a little bit, but speaking of going to see them perform and stuff like that, do you have, like for example, I know you have books of your photography when it comes to hip hop. Do you have stuff like that when it comes to the punk rock scene?
No, I haven't really put anything together with it. I mean, I have what I call a handful and a half of stuff. Like I have the times that I photographed Bad Brains was, for example, was when HR was with the band for about a year, and there was another guy that filled in, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head. So I don't feel like it's culturally or historically right to put this other guy in when they were in the mix of it all. I mean, I have stuff of Henry Rollins, some stuff of In Living Color. What other punk stuff do I have? Bouncing Souls, because they were good friends of, they still are good friends of mine. I'd have to look what other stuff, but then I also have a bunch of skateboarding related stuff from you know, like the late 80s, early 90s skateboarding stuff. Like I even have these beautiful shots that I showed a couple weeks ago in Brooklyn of like the old Brooklyn banks in New York. So it's an overhead shot where you can really see from two different angles the beauty of what the Brooklyn banks were. What's a significant skateboard spot in New York City where everyone would come on the weekends and skate. They used to have contests and events at the Brooklyn Banks in Manhattan, and it's right where the Brooklyn Bridge comes down into Manhattan. There was where the road comes down, and there was like this little bubble bank. Then you can ollie over the bank to go into the street. But that was the area for me from 1988 to probably 1991 that I would always go there, you know, and for the skate contest or just to skate period. But what it also allowed me for was my first published picture ever in Thrasher magazine in 1988 was a picture I shot of a woman who was the first person to ever skate in a Brooklyn Banks contest that Thrasher ran in full color back in 1988 while I was a junior in high school. So that was kind of a trip.
Did you say ollie over?
Yes, ollie. Like, you know, like a bunch hop and skateboard.
Yeah, no. I kind of caught that, and I was like, I believe that's a skateboard.
Yeah. It's just like a bunny hop, but it's called an ollie in skateboarding because Alan Ollie Geffen, I think is his last name, is the one that invented the trick. I don't know if it was in the late 70s or early 80s, but that's significant of being able to jump up on the board and lift it with your feet without having to grab it. It's like made every other trick possible in skateboarding.
Right. So since we're talking about skateboarding, can you tell us a little bit more as far as, you know, how you got into skateboarding? And not only that, but you're somebody that's very important in the skateboard community. I mean, it's not like you just got on the board and was just playing around and I mean, can you explain a little bit more on that?
Yeah, and it goes back to, again, all the kids I was hanging out with when skateboarding started to become popular. I want to say around here, probably, I think it was the summer of '87 when like the Bones Brigade was big, which was like Tony Hawk and his whole crew. I just got, learned how to ride a skateboard along with my friends, and instantly I wanted to gravitate to where are the scenes where skateboarding is popular in terms of the culture. So for us around Central Jersey, we used to have a roller skating rink that would allow us to skateboard there every Wednesday night. And then there was one in South Jersey, so I would go to those things, and then also, like I was saying, go to the Brooklyn Banks on the weekends for contests and events. And it allowed me to being a part of the contest in New York, like as a skater, but also as a photographer, documenting it. It allowed my pictures to get into whether it's Transworld Skateboarding Magazine and Thrasher Magazine, along with the results. And then being a part of that scene, I naturally just wanted to be, more than just a photographer. So I would help coordinate the events, and learning how to coordinate events allowed me to start running my own skateboarding events while I was still in high school at the roller rink, where I did fundraisers at the roller rink. At the time, it was for there was a guy at my church who was having a heart surgery, so we did fundraisers to help him raise money towards his medical costs. And that's actually on YouTube, believe it or not, from back in '88 and in 1989. You can find it on YouTube if you look up. I think it's something like ABF, like Alpha Beta Flower Skate Shop, Kendall Park, New Jersey. You can see there's like 5 different reels on YouTube, and also I was able to bring in a lot of professionals at the time. So I had guys like Mike Valley, the early Zoo Yorker Shut team came down and skated for free, and like it was a great fundraiser of a night. But I went on from the late '80s, early '90s to when I left doing hip hop photography. I started an amateur skateboard league called the United Skateboarding Association, and with that, I was able to form 2 specific skateboard leagues for the amateurs, giving back to the next generation sort of what was given to me. So I did that from 1998 to 2005, and within that time period, I was able to do marketing around the skateboard league, where I think by our second year, we worked with Transworld Skateboarding Magazine, and they brought Activision to us. So we were able to start marketing the first Tony Hawk Pro Skater video game. And then the other title that Activision brought to us was the Wu-Tang Shaolin Style video game. So those were the 2 first brands that I was able to start marketing, not only at our events, but I took them to other action sports events. So we take them to surfing events, BMX and snowboarding events. And then that relationship lasted for 4 years, adding all the other action sports titles, to our marketing. It was almost like a marketing agency, if you would, in many words. So it was like Tony Hawk 1 through 4, the Sean Palmer snowboarding, the Matt Hoffman BMX, the Sean Murray wakeboarding, the Sean Palmer snowboarding event. So and it kept growing and growing, where I'd have a team of guys that would just go on the road and not only do like skateboarding, BX, and snowboarding events. We also went to like state fairs and set up a video game trial booth before it became normal. And so this was back in the day. In addition to branching out and producing events for other people, specifically Tony Hawk, as he was starting. He was always a star, but before he like really went to superstardom, I would coordinate some of his events. I did one in Toronto that actually set a record in terms of attendance at it's now called the Rogers Center. So if you ever look at the Rogers Center top 25 events to ever happen there, the event that I did for Tony is I think the number 12 or 13th event to ever happen there, right behind WrestleMania. And so I produced some other events for him as well.
Nice. Man.
How long did you work at Thrasher for?
I freelanced. So from I first started getting stuff while I was in high school. So that's 88, 89. And then I didn't think about it anymore. But in 1992, when I started doing hip hop photography, if you would, I reached out to Thrasher because I needed to get a magazine behind me. So I talked to the publishers, they remembered me, and we basically cut a deal where if I took the shot and I wrote the article, they would run it in their music section. So with Thrasher, that was 1992 to probably 1995, and then by 1995, I started working, fall of 1995, became the photo editor of the Source magazine after Chimo Du left.
Okay, very dope. So talk a little bit about the transition from skateboarding photography to hip-hop photography.
It was very similar in meaning that I didn't stick with skateboarding photography because back then everything was on film. So you had to be very methodical, or I had to, because I was doing everything out of pocket budget wise, so I couldn't shoot as much skateboarding stuff because it took people 5 or 10 tries to get one trick, so I would waste film after a while. So what I would concentrate on is the shots that I knew that I could get published, whether it's a group of people holding their trophies, whether it's this significant thing or that significant thing. And I've kept it very simple in terms of what I shot in skateboarding. Whereas when the opportunity where skateboarding and hip hop literally crossed, my intersection at the same time, I found it was so much easier, whether it's going to a stage or wherever, and shooting 1 or 2 shots that I knew I would get, because it's not like they're doing a trick. They're sort of just going back and forth. So you're timing your shot if it's a live show to get that 1 or 2 shots, or if you get the certain moment, then you can sort of pose them or see what's coming and sort of shoot it like that. And a lot of my early shots, when you look at them, you could see the certain angles, because in skateboarding, back then, within one shot, you had to shoot it at just the right angle, at just the right moment. So you, as the lay viewer, like in a magazine, you look at that one shot, you knew exactly what the trick was without question, just because of how and when it was timed. I did a lot of the same timing when it came to my photography around hip hop, where I would sort of move back a little bit more, give you more perspective of what was going on from different angles. So it gave you a feel of not necessarily wide or fisheye, but it just gave you more storytelling ability rather than just a typical yo, 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 right in your face kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, it was more about the storytelling in one single moment.
Right. As far as hip hop photographers that came before you or around that time, who were some of your influences, and how did you kind of separate yourself from what they were doing?
It's interesting because when I came into the music industry and the hip hop world, or however you want to call it, I didn't study other photographers. Like, I didn't know other photographers prior to coming into it. But what ended up happening is, as I was starting on my way, like, I met people like Ernie Panicoli, who had been around shooting for like Word Up magazine and all the different magazines like that. And then by the next, that was like 92-ish. By 93, I met up with Chimodu. We were both shooting Large Professor at the same time. I think we were out in Queens somewhere in a music studio, and she and I started talking. Come to find out, we're from the same area of New Jersey, and we just sort of really hit it off. And he invited me to come down to the Source magazine and hang out. And once he did that, like, I got my foot in the door there. Like, I would always stop by there just to see if I can help out with anything, what I could learn, I just kept my foot in that door where I wasn't taking my foot out the door. Like, I want to be able to go by that office anytime I want without question, leave my bags there. And that's what came. And then as I went along, I'm trying to think what other photographers. I mean, there was a lot of other people that were at my same freelance level that were working their way up the chain, if you would. So I didn't know too many people. I didn't study photography, so I didn't have an art or photography history background. It was sort of like everything was on the fly, but in a disciplined way.
So I'm going to kind of flip that question that he just asked you, and this is what I would like to know. So you have there's Joe Conzo.
Yes.
There's Ernie, like you mentioned. There's Jamal Shabazz.
Right.
Who else? I'm missing someone. I forgot. I can't remember. I know I'm missing somebody else there, but I can't remember. But out of all of these guys,
right,
who's the better photographer?
Everyone has a different style. And
no, come on, man. We're trying to start some photography beef.
I'm gonna work on
what's the photography beef,
Because here's what it is.
I'm joking.
In 1997, 1998, when I was done with photography, it didn't thrill me anymore. So I was like, this was fun. I'm leaving it, starting an amateur skateboard league. So fast forward, we go through the skateboard era, and then I did a bunch of marketing work from 2005 to 2014. It was more and more marketing. And then by 2012, I knew I had to figure out something because I had this whole archive of film and I needed to do something with it. And I ended up running into Chimodu on the street randomly here in Jersey. And then long story short of it, he was basically like, well, what are you going to do with your old stuff? I was like, I want to share it, but I don't want to get it stolen and bootleg. So his whole thing was like, you got to just start sharing it. So I did my due diligence and I started sharing it, through social media with my, rectangle, at T.Eric on it. That way it wasn't get bootlegged or whatever. And then as I started sharing more and more, I noticed more and more photographers. So that's when I learned about Joe Conzo. I learned about, I knew Ronnie Wright already, but Jamil GS, Jamil Shabazz, Jeanette Beckman,
Danny Hastings.
Danny Hastings. Like, actually, I never met him, but I knew of him even while I was shooting, but I never actually met him. So I learned more about my peers, if you would,
Mhm.
and my latter career coming back to start resharing rather than knowing them during the actual time period, you know. So it was interesting to, like, even now, being involved with the Photographiska show celebrating the 50th anniversary of hip hop, the amount of photographers whose work is shown that I didn't know back in the day, you know, because
Right.
everything was in a magazine. And I feel like everyone was rushed back then. We shot it, tried to get into a magazine. If it didn't make it, you sort of put it on the shelf and went for the next, opportunity or whatever it was. So it was a constant grind, always having to be in the moment because there was no social media sharing of the stuff during that time period. But I'm grateful that I'm still here to be able to go back and look and appreciate and start to meet all these other photographers who are part of that whole time period.
Dope, dope, dope. So I just do want to say I was joking. You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
lot of respect for all the guys that we just mentioned. I have some of their books as well as yours. And I just want to take a quick second to say thank you to you and all of these guys, because us loving the culture,
Right,
and like I think you were getting ready to say, and I might have cut you off, that everybody had their certain thing about the way they take their, what makes you, what makes Jamel, so on and so
right,
forth. But it gives us so many different perspectives of, whether it's an artist that you might have captured, that this person captured something else.
right,
You know what I mean? Like, it kind of, especially back then, it gave us, like you said, there was no social media. So sometimes you would just catch photos in a magazine or an album cover, whatever, and
right,
kind of brought things. If you heard the music, you painted a picture in your mind,
right,
but your photographs help bring that to life.
right.
You know what I mean? So I just want to say,
Completely agree.
thank you for your work and everybody else's contribution as well.
Oh, you're most welcome. I'm grateful the time period that we're in now. And again, from that meeting with Chi, I think, like I said, in 2012 or whatever, like starting to go back through my old archive and scanning stuff and looking at stuff and working through it. And then, up to, was it 2018, 19, starting to publish the books and releasing the books and, doing the first 3 volumes and then the gold book. And I have a free ebook available now, on my LinkedIn page, where it's around my NFT collection. And I'm making another book. But it's a matter of, there's so much history to share, and it's just so many moments. And there's like another book, a couple other books that I still have in the back of my head, but it's just a matter of timing where I'm self-publishing everything I'm doing. But it's a matter of sharing all of these unique stories, and one thing that's interesting now is because I'm able to share the images that I have. A perfect example is the image of Biggie, Tupac, and Little Caesar together. The one that was I think it was in 2019ish or whatever. I was at a show in New York, and for whatever reason, I brought a little folder of 8x10s with me, and I don't normally do that, but thank God that I did, because one of the pictures was Biggie, Tupac, and C's, and later in that evening, Little Caesar happened to pop up, and I was able to get a video, a conversation of him going over that picture, telling his backstory of that picture in that moment, because otherwise, like if I never scanned it or didn't go back to it, we'd have never gotten a true history of knowing the friendship of Biggie, Tupac, and Little C's, their true friendship that it was. So I'm grateful. I would like to cross-reference a lot of the people that I photographed to get their take on that time period of what they were going through. Who knows what, what storytelling can come of it, because even similar lines is some of the stuff that I have a big pun, and every so often, his wife Eliza, when I share a picture, like it touches her, like she tells like different like quick moments or whatever, like there's a picture called a family moment, and it's not the most cheery picture, but it's a real moment with Big Pun, Liza, and Christopher, who's sort of in the background, and I called it a family moment, and she was like, that's one of the realest picture moments about their life, and it's like, who knew, but to me, it was kind of a depressing picture, and I didn't share it for years and years and years. But finally, I was just like, let me just put it out there anyway. Like, it wasn't a bad picture, but for her, it was telling a true moment of their life. Well, it's not the glam, it's not the glitz. It's like, life is hard. Like, things are messed up over time. You know what I mean? But it's like a real moment. So to be able to talk to her and get her feedback, or thoughts about that time period, or whatever other artists that I photographed, to get their take on that period of time, in their young career.
Right.
That's I find very interesting. A lot of your photos, like even though you might have gone out, let's say, to do a photo shoot,
Yes.
sometimes some of the photos that we see, it almost seems like it was like you caught natural moments that, even though we were like, okay, yeah, we're gonna go out do a photo shoot, but something like, I think I might have told you this the last time, but there's the one of Pun and his son when he was little, sitting on the stoop.
Yes.
I think it was in front of the house.
Yes, correct. Yes.
And the reason why that one always stands out is because like I told you last time, his son, I think for one of Pun's birthdays, something like that, shared that picture.
Right. Yes.
And he wrote something very nice. And then I found out that, you had taken that photo.
Right.
But you gave a great story as what was going on that day.
Right. From my perspective. Yes.
Right. But that's what I mean. Like, you capture those moments that's probably why it resonates so much, because it's not just, hey, do me a favor, sit right there, look this way, turn this way. It's them in their natural element.
Yes, very much so.
And that's really that's personally, that's one of the things I love about your work.
Thank you. And it's interesting, like in the time of photographing it, I don't think I was ultra conscious, well, in the sense of just capturing people naturally. But I feel like another side of the way that I've captured moments, I like to sort of compare it to, like the old family photo album, where you look through it and you all you have to do is look at the one picture and it tells you the story of the picture. So in many ways, like coming up as a kid, I was always taking pictures for the family album. So it sort of trained me in a way of telling the story in just one moment without realizing it. I can look back now and say and analyze it in that way.
Right.
But it's definitely sort of taking yourself, coming back out of the shot. And it's like, yeah, you can get the yo, but I feel you get so much more when you're the observer, and being able to pull yourself as the photographer out of the moment and allow the subject to talk to the audience in so many ways, because even I think it was last week was the Photographisco opening, and I ran into Raekwon, and I had never really had time with him, and I had showed him two of the shots that I shot of him and Ghost, and like his face just lit up, and like he was overly excited because he said something to the effect of like, yo, this was, how did he say it? Basically like such a young real time for them, and hopefully he'll follow back up, because he was interested in some of the moments, because it speaks of their young raw talent in such a unique moment where it's not them cooking it up, it's just a pure real moment of them, and from the viewer's perspective, like you really get to see or be inside or be within the moment with them.
It is now storytelling time. You said that you got you said you got Little Caesar's backstory behind that picture. What's your story behind the night you took the picture with Lil C's, Big, and Pac?
So my story behind that, it was in 1993. I was the venue, I think it was called the Academy. It was in Midtown Manhattan. I was there to photograph Onyx for a feature in Thrasher Magazine's music section. So I got to the venue early, met with Onyx. We decided pre-show we're going to go downstairs to the stage while curtain was still closed, and photograph some stuff on the stage, not necessarily of them perform, but stuff on stage, and then just go with the flow from there. So we go downstairs. I set up a couple strobes or flashes, if you would, and I started just getting some great different angles of Onyx or whatever. And then by the time we were finished, like I knew what I got. I knew what I captured was right, like because back then there was no like checking the back of the screen, like looking, like you just had to know with your gut that you got those moments. So as I'm finishing up, I hear these guys yell over to me, "Yo, come take our picture!" And I couldn't see her, I didn't know who it was. I said, "Yeah, all right, just give me a second." So I pack up, my camera equipment. I go over to these guys, bunched up on the side of the stage or whatever. I look at them and sort of like with my hands, just sort of line them up so I knew I could see everyone in the shot. Took one picture, said thank you, and went back to Onyx's dressing room. It wasn't until 2012. Well, prior to 2012, I shot them, photographed them on slide film. So it's like with slide film, you just get what you get in that moment. Right. So on the slide, I wrote Tupac middle finger because he was the only person that I knew at that time, but he wasn't relevant in my mind for anything, and also because he had a middle finger up. Magazines during the 90s and early 2000s wouldn't run a middle finger in a magazine. So for years and years, I just kept pushing it to the side. I think it was like 2012 or so when I started sorting through my slides, and I went to the Tupac middle finger slide. And I remember putting the slide on the light table and getting out, a loop, which is like a magnifier, and like really staring into it. And then I'm realizing I just start laughing and laughing and laughing. Come to find out, there's Biggie, there's Little Caesar, and they're all wearing "I'm a Bad Boy" shirt. So the only thing I could do was laugh, because all these years I didn't know who these kids were in this picture, all these guys were. But it's just like, it was that one moment, you know. But thank God I wasn't like some dickhead, like, oh, fuck you, who are you? You know, like, I wouldn't say that. But it's just like, I've seen people be not so nice to other people, you know what I mean? Where I'm just like, what does it take for me to go take one moment and say thank you? Like, even the slightest of nobody, you know what I mean? But thank goodness, like, that kindness transitioned into being a genuine, true moment within hip hop, you know. So that's the story behind that one moment, you know, of just being courteous. Like, that's what that moment came from.
What do you remember most about a young Crisscross?
Wow. I call it the start of my career into 90s hip hop, because I photographed Crisscross at a live show. It was the MTV Beach Bash in Belmar, New Jersey. And I was at the event because they had a big 2-day skateboarding event there. So I was there to hang out with my skateboard friends. Oh. Is he still there? Sincere, you went dark. All right. You good?
You good?
All right. He's dynamite. All right, cool. So, yeah, I was at an event because it was a music event in skateboarding. I was there because of the skateboard portion. The second day of the event was when Crisscross and Docs Effects were to perform. So what I ended up doing was I got a stage pass just to go down and, in my mind, just watch the Crisscross show and maybe take a few pictures. But what that allowed me to do was, once the performance was over, I was able to go backstage and get a couple more shots of Crisscross. And another photographer, a more professional photographer, said to me, "What are you doing with your pictures?" I said, "I don't know, I just got a photo pass because I didn't want to deal with the crowd." He's like, "Well, why don't you try and sell your pictures?" Sell my pictures? Like, who wants to buy? It wasn't a thought. Like, I didn't, like, it was just, I was there just to be there for skateboarding. But thank God he asked the question, or you know, put the idea out there to potentially sell, because he ended up giving me a list of 10 people or places to call of people who potentially would want to buy my images. And 1 through 9, I either got a no thank you or no response. But the 10th person said, "You know what, bring your stuff in, let me see what you have." And I didn't even know what that meant. So I had to ask the real photographer what that meant. And so he explained it to me. So I ended up going to this photo agency. They looked at the stuff. They were like, it was okay, but they gave me another opportunity. And I was just like, what do you mean another opportunity? So they lined up an opportunity for me to photograph Arrested Development the following weekend. And then that just started the ball rolling into, you know, what we know now is, you know, rare and unseen moments of 90s hip hop.
Dope.
You mentioned landing at the Source in '95. Take us back to how you got there and time at the Source.
So I first started freelancing or submitting stuff to the Source as early as '93 when I first met Chimo Du. And from '93, '94, I just kept going to the office all the time and just watching how things were working. And I think summer into fall of 1995, like right after the Source Awards, Chimo Du left the Source as a photo editor to be, I think the title was the photo director, where he basically just shot the covers, and that was his only assignment. So it left an opening as photo editor. And in my mind, I knew for the most part what he did all week, you know, in terms of, you know, like everything was set on a schedule. So you had to hire photographers, source out certain images for certain parts of the magazine. So I was like, in my mind, I knew I could do that. So I interviewed with Dave Mays and Bakari Katwana, I think that's how you say his last name at the time, who was the editor-in-chief. And they basically, you know, gave me an opportunity to come in as photo editor, but they didn't call it photo editor initially. But by the second or third issue working there as a photo editor, like I shot a few features, but then I sort of just dedicated to hiring other photographers to shoot and sort of coordinate. And then that's what got my foot in the door and got me moving internally as a photo editor at the magazine. But over time, the editors-in-chief changed and politics came into play, and it wasn't fun anymore. Like the excitement about it wasn't as fun, because I was more of a, you know, move my way around the city, network with the labels or magazines or do this or do that, where I was sort of tied to the desk, if you would. So the thrill and fun wasn't there after a while. And I think by I remember when they started to do this Tupac issue, the black and white issue, it was somewhere around that time period where I was just like, the fun is gone. Like I lost my drive. I'm like, this isn't for me. And I remember not too long after that, you know, sort of putting in my resignation and just going back into freelance photography. But at the same time, I had an inkling or an itch to really get back to skateboarding and work on, you know, giving the next generation of skaters a similar opportunity of what I had in terms of a contest league. And during that same time period of not feeling it, every day I would leave the source for lunch, and we were located on Broadway and Houston in New York, between Houston and Prince Street. So on the opposite diagonal corner on Prince and Lafayette, there was a skate shop. So every day I went to the skate shop, hung out with my friends, you know, BS. And it was like, it gave me that thrill and excitement before I went back to work. I'm like, okay, so going to the skate shop every day, and the skate shop ended up being Supreme, as we know, this big giant brand. But it's like going to the skate shop is what kept my sanity, like going in there, hanging out, bullshitting with, you know, fellow skaters. That's what gave me the sanity to deal with the source and the BS and the. So when I knew it was right for me to, with this idea that I have of giving back to the next generation of skaters, was because what drew me every day to go to the skate shop, to have my peace of mind, was being around skaters or that skate environment. So when it came time to leave and start, you know, planning out this amateur skateboard thing that I've been thinking about, it just happened step by step. Right. So it was interesting working at the source, but it wasn't being on staff and being inside the machine wasn't for me.
I'm sorry, you just mentioned about going to that skateboarding spot that eventually turned into what we know as Supreme.
Yes.
But so initially it was just what was it, like just a little shop?
I mean, it was a skate shop. It was still Supreme, but it wasn't the mega brand of Supreme. It's like, but to me, it was just the local skate shop. You know what I mean? But it still had the same clean aesthetics as we know of Supreme when you walk in the door. Right, but back then, it hadn't blown. It was just the neighborhood, like, go-to spot for everybody.
Where was that located again?
It was on Lafayette and Prince Street.
Oh, okay. All right. You know, I never realized that that's what.
Yeah.
I mean, I know exactly, because I used to work around there. I worked on Green Street for a while. I worked on Mulberry Street. You know, I was all
right.
over
That's that whole little area. Yeah.
And I remember that place, and I don't think I ever put two and two together. That's the same spot that turned into.
That's where Supreme started.
Wow.
In '94, they started there.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Cool.
So it was trippy because you had guys like Justin Pierce, who was in the movie Kids with Harold, and Justin was like my go-to dude because I'd go there, bullshit BS or whatever. We'd roll up or whatever, go in the alley in the back, puff, you know what I mean, and, and then go back to work. But that was my sanity, you know what I mean, back then. And like Justin went on from doing Kids, and then he did some commercials. Then he was in Friday After Next or whatever, and a couple other movie projects. But it was just that was a part of that whole creative circle.
Nice. Wow, cool.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
At what point did you decide that you wanted to put these books together?
2018, 2019. Because I was trying to figure out what book publisher I could go to publish a book, to this, to that. And someone I was working with that was, working on my website stuff and some other stuff was like, one of my friends already did, publish her own book. You can do it too. I was just like, how? She figured it out. You know what I mean? So it was as simple as, taking what I did was, at the time I was very active on Instagram. So I'd post pretty much Monday through Friday, and I'd have it like broken down by series blocks, as I called them. So what I ended up doing was taking each series, I think it was like series 1 through 9 or something. We took the first 3 series, and that became like the first book, and 4, 5, and 6 became the second book. 6, 7, and 8 or whatever, became the third book or whatever. So I utilized my Instagram, not necessarily everything that I posted during those time periods, but that was the outline that I used to create volume 1, volume 2, volume 3. And then I did a collector's edition gold book, which was all 3 put together plus bonus materials, and it was a high quality art book. And then during that time, I had to start writing essays telling about each photograph and each moment. And it's like, it took a while to get my writing chops up. And like first I was working, with the person who helped me design the books. And then I found a copy editor, someone I actually went to school with, who was a phenomenal copy editor. So I started working with her more and more on my writing and building up my writing chops to the point now where, I feel like I'm a really good writer, where I can tell my stories, like where I understand what it is that I need to express, how I need to have a voice, of whether it's the subject, telling about what's going on. So it's fun writing now, whereas I remember in the beginning, it was like pulling teeth to get me to write. Whereas now it's just like, it just flows, So there's other books that I want to do based on the material and understanding that I can write, and I have the right people around me to to not only edit it down, but to ask the right questions to get me to write more about this or write about that I may not be conscious of when I'm initially writing about it.
Right.
Can you just in case somebody watching this that might want, inspired to be a writer or something like that, you're saying it was hard for you at the beginning, but then you
Mm-hmm.
found a way of how to make it flow. But
Right.
what exactly was it that how did you teach yourself to become a good writer?
I think the first part of it, and here's the funny part. When I worked for Thrasher, their stipulation was you shoot the picture, you write the article. I never thought about it. I just wrote it, boom, sent it to them. They did the little edits, boom, publish it. There was never a hiccup or never a brain freeze where I felt like during writing the books initially, I had this major brain freeze of like, oh, well, I'm not a great writer. Like, I don't know why I had all these doubts about being able to do it. Like I should know better. It's ego. But once I stopped being my own deterrent in terms of expressing myself with a pen, then this just flowed easy. It was just literally allowing myself to talk about the moments, like the starting off with a who, what, when, and where kind of thing, and then like filling in the gaps, telling a little bit more backstory if it was necessary, or filler material if it was necessary. But it just, the more you write, the more you do, the more positive critiques that you get about the work and what people may want to learn or find out about the moment. Like every time I write now, all those same questions or thoughts or suggestions, ideas always pop in as I'm writing and rewriting and rewriting and rewriting.
Okay.
When
I
you
have a hard
drop,
time with that. That's why I was asking too.
Yeah, but you just got to go for it, and just have like positive people around you to help you get the right speech out, so it covers all across the board, if you would.
Yeah, right. And probably not overthinking it helps a
Yeah,
lot
that's
too.
the other part. I was overthinking, like
Okay. Yeah.
trying to avoid it. Yeah.
Right. Gotcha.
when you drop those books of rare and unseen moments, what kind of reaction did you get from the general public and from your peers in the industry?
It was two-part. Like the general public embraced it. Like they were super happy because it was brand new material. It wasn't the typical things that they read about or the material that has been given to them, whether it's about gangster hip hop, about beef. It wasn't about just about this or just about, it was from a completely different angle that was sort of like mainstream right down the road, where I'm just talking about the 90s hip hop. I'm talking about a person. I'm talking about a general moment that I experienced, and that was my angle. I wasn't coming at it from, I didn't have an ulterior motive in writing it. It was just purely about the moments that I experienced, sharing with the artists themselves. So it was a very general perspective that anyone could read. And then the other part of it was one of the great feedbacks that I got one time was from a person that was a parent, where they were happy that they were able to read the stories to their kids because there's no profanity. There's nothing negative about it, where you could read it to your kids. And I'm like, that's kind of trippy. Like I didn't think about that it was general audience, readable, if you would, so that was kind of touching.
Right. Very dope. 2020, we were all locked in the house. Pandemic it's had us all locked in the house, of course. Was broadened exposure something that came from being locked in the house?
No, that actually started way before the whole shutdown. Broadened exposure is my first fine art collection. It's like 15 different moments within my 90s hip hop moments, if you would, where these 15 pieces, they can stand the test of time in the art world, if you would. So what I ended up doing was I printed a lot of the moments from the Broadened Exposure collection, and I have do I have the majority of them? Almost the majority of them hanging at different locations around the Lower East Side of New York. So I have one in the lobby of Hotel Indigo. I have some at the Bowery Showroom, which is a popular clothing store. I have some at two pictures at a chai bar in the Lower East Side. I have one at Lamb's, which is like a big clothing store on Orchard Street. I have one of the pictures of Big Pun and Son at the Frank's Chop Shop Barbershop in the Lower East Side. I'm missing a location. I have one in Brooklyn at Vinny's. Where else do I have shots? I hope I'm not missing a location. I think those are pretty much it. But so you can take a tour of the Lower East Side and piece of Brooklyn. And also, Privilege in Lafayette, which is a Japanese-owned store in the Lower East Side, where I have a picture of Old Dirty Bastard, Tupac, and most definitely Talib Kweli when you walk in the store. And that store also owns a bunch of stores in Japan, but they have their flagship here in New York. So it allows, if on a weekend someone can just go through all these stores and check out a lot of my work. So it's a great experience because people walking in the store, for example, even yesterday, Old Dirty Bastard's daughter just happened to walk into one of the stores that had his portrait in it, so she puts it on Instagram on her stories, like out of the blue or whatever. She tripped out on it. So she was really happy about it. So it's like, I love when people walk into my work, especially if they're the family of one of the artists. Like, it's very, it makes them happy, and it makes me happy that the work touches them.
So did you make the connect? Like you said, she posted the picture, but did you reach out to her like, hey, yeah, I took that picture? Or
no? Well, she knew it. She knew it instantly when she walked in the door. So she put it on her Instagram stories, if you would. And she tagged me in it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
That's how I found out.
Nice.
Yeah, sorry, I said it backwards. But yeah, it's always an honor, like, because
nice.
I met with the Old Dirty Bastard's family a while ago, at least his daughter Taniqua specifically, and the way that I explain how I share my moments specifically of Old Dirty Bastard is how I knew him in terms of the time that I spent with him, and I explained to her, I was like, I don't like all the pictures that are shared of him, because I equate it to, we all think of James Brown, how pretty James Brown is, his hair, his style, whatever. But we also remember that one mugshot of James Brown.
Thundercat.
So I explained to her, I was like, we don't want to share your father's mugshot shots, you know what I mean?
Right.
Not his best imagery. I said, I see him, and I want to share, the prettier side of James Brown at all moments that I can, because of, what Old DB meant to me and what he means to so many people. Like, yes, we know the mugshot, but let's not share the mugshot.
Right.
So if we're going to keep someone's legacy and iconic nature, we have to always show them at their best moments.
Right.
How did you link up with Vans?
I linked up with Vans. Was it March 2020? I think it was March 2020. I'm pretty sure. It came through NJ Skate Shop, which is a skateboard shop here in New Jersey, where they were creating a collection called the Vans Brick Collection. So the brick specifically, throughout New York City and a lot of the Northeast, a lot of your red bricks came from Sayreville, New Jersey, and Sayreville is where NJ Skate Shop originated from. So they created this entire project based around the New Jersey brick that created so many iconic places around New York, like the Brooklyn Banks, like I mentioned earlier. So a lot of your places around New York, again, or the Northeast, originate from the bricks. So they made these Vans half cabs that had these the brick designs in the side of the shoe or whatever. So we had a big storytelling around just the bricks. They had the maroon color half cab Vans sneaker, and then they did a few T-shirts. And with the T-shirts that were a part of the collection, they utilized my Redman picture with Redman holding, leaning on the pizza boxes, because Redman's from Brick City, New Jersey.
Right.
And then even Redman's skate shop in Staten Island, he actually went there and did this, like 4-minute reel with him holding the T-shirt and talking about the moment. So it was a very well-rounded collaboration, that made sense on all fronts.
Nice.
2023, what is T. Eric Monroe got coming up this year?
From what I know so far, well, last week, the Fotografiska Art Museum, with Mass Appeal and the 50th Hip Hop 50 just opened an exhibition, highlighting the 50 years of hip hop. So I have 4 images within that showing. One of Busta Rhymes, one of Tupac. I think the shot's called Brotherly Love, where it's him hugging his friends and they're having this, very happy moment that was taken in Harlem in 1994. I have a picture of Lauryn Hill in there, and then I also have the picture of Biggie and Tupac inside the show. So I have those 4 moments inside the exhibition at Fotografiska. That goes until May. I have a project coming up in Japan. I think it's going to come out in the spring, where it's like 4 T-shirts working with the same shop, Privilege Lafayette, at a bunch of their stores in Japan. So it'll be 3 different images of mine on T-shirts that it's going to run in Japan in the spring. What else is coming up? I also have in September, I'm going to have a gallery show in Montreal. I don't know what it's going to be called, but it's me and probably 2 other photographers. It's going to be a big gallery event around hip hop in Montreal. The exhibition with Photograph Feast is also going to travel to 5 other cities. I know it's going to Stockholm, Shanghai, and I forgot the other 2 cities. So that exhibition is going to travel. What else is coming up? Shit, I feel like I'm missing something.
Possibly an NFT.
I don't know if I'm on the fence about doing another NFT project. I mean, I did well with the first NFT project, but I feel like right now there's sort of like a lull. Like it went up, and then like the market's kind of like a lull. There's a few companies that have shared interest in me doing projects with them. I just have to make sure it's the right way of presenting the work and that it's shareable, because a couple companies want to do just one off, like one image only available of this shot or that shot, and I'm like, I can't just give away. Like I did a few exclusive with the last collection that I did. But I feel like I want to be more inclusive, where at least have 5 images available with this, or 10 images available, where I don't want to just do one, image available. So it sort of loses something, because I'm all about sharing moments or sharing things. So I have to have at least 5 to be able to be available to people around the world to be a part of another collection. So potentially another NFT collection may come along, but I'm not pushing for it right at the moment. I'm trying to think what else is coming this year. Another book I'm going to do, it'll probably come out in the fall. It'll be similar to the ebook that's free and available right now, but it won't talk about NFTs. It'll have a lot of the same moments that are in the ebook, and I'll have some other material in there. So I'll probably put that out by the fall. I'm trying to think what else. Those are the only main things that I know as of right now. But other things will present themselves, because I'm in negotiations right now with a few things that are happening. So we'll see what will sift out. But the more opportunities that I get to travel and share, like that's what this is about right now. It's just sharing as much as I can share with the moments of hip hop that I have, and skateboarding and punk, or whatever that I can share, because I have so much collected. But it doesn't do me any good being in my filing cabinets or being in store. It's about getting it out to the general public for them to really absorb and share in.
Do you ever think about doing something like I don't know, maybe like a documentary, or something on film?
Yeah, actually, I have. I haven't outlined it, but to answer your question, I actually have thought about doing a documentary, because I feel like I have a very unique story, being that I'm a kid from the suburbs, came up in a very diverse background with the skate, punk rock. I love fishing and I love nature. But moving forward, like all that I've done, not only as a kid going into the New York music industry and being very successful, and then I'm bored of it, so I'm like, okay, I'm over it, let me go on to the next thing, and starting an amateur skateboard league, and I was able to accomplish with the kids, with the skateboard leagues, where there was even kids that came through the skateboard league that went on to become medals in the X Games, which kind of tripped me out. But it's like I was grateful that I was at least instrumental in a part of their upbringing of their families traveling around and going to my different skateboarding competitions, around the country. And then fast forward to, obviously working with Tony Hawk, or so many, things that I've done. I've managed music tours. I've done quite a few things where I think it's very interesting, how I just keep going and going on, and it's a very interesting story to tell. And from, again, you can live in the middle of nowhere. My whole thing is, yeah, you can live in the middle of nowhere and you can still do it. One thing, years ago here's an example, when I used to manage music tours, the tour would always go through St. Louis, and there was a DJ out there who would hit me up because he always wanted to interview the rappers that were on tour for his podcast CD, if you would. Okay. So I looked him up every time, like took care of him, his people, whatever he wanted. The kid, I can't say kid, the gentleman, was a very good DJ, and ended up, moving on to DJ for Killer Mike out of Atlanta, and then he went on, and now he's part of Run the Jewels, DJ Trackstar the DJ, you know what I mean? Yeah. But it's just, for me, it was just like someone asked me, like, can you give me access to do this? Of course, because someone gave me access to do something, you know what I mean? But it's always just helping someone, you just never know where it's going to lead. But now, he's this amazing DJ that tours the world, and he just, did an amazing tour with Rage Against the Machine. But it's just like, again, one of those things, like, you're in the middle of nowhere, of course you can do it, you know what I mean? Because you have so much that comes across, and if I can help facilitate it, I'm not going to say no.
Gotcha. Just out of curiosity, it's kind of off topic, but not off topic, I'm sorry, but did you cross paths with Ricky Powell?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So here's the funny thing is, back in the '90s, I didn't really what was it? I didn't really cross paths with Ricky. Well, no, I did, but I didn't know him in the '90s. I have a couple pictures of him in the background in the '90s. Fast forward to 2007, 2008, I was working for an agency, Frank 151 magazine, and they also had an agency, so I worked on the agency side. So they would use, Ricky, to do little pieces for their magazine or whatever. So Ricky would always come in the office, and I was on, I think it was only one of two black people in this whole agency office or whatever. So Ricky gravitated towards me. We just started like chatting it up, and he just knew me from, managing the music tours or managing this. And I never talked about photography. And like we had a really good friendship, you know what I mean? Just talking about cornball shit, as Ricky would say. And then once I left the agency and I started like sharing my hip hop work or whatever, and we like crossed paths again, he was sort of shocked that I never talked about photography. I never talked about this. I never talked about, but we just became good friends, because I wasn't sweating him like for being the fourth Beastie Boys. I wasn't on his jock, or it was just a genuine knowing of a person. So as we moved forward in time, it was more of a respect thing because he also understood what it was like to go out on the road on tours and deal with this and deal. So it allowed for a very good connection in terms of friendship, prior to his passing. And even before his passing, like, seeing him in the village or having lunch with him or bullshitting, like even I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks before he passed. I remember calling him when I was running around with a couple of my friends around town, wanting to meet up with him for lunch, but he just like his energy wasn't there. Like he just couldn't get out of the house or whatever. And we're talking and bullshitting and talking. And it was just like, I remember at the end of the conversation, I was like, yo, man, Rick, I love you. Be well. You know what I mean? And that was like a genuine thing. You know what I mean? And like, who knew that was going to be the last time I got to speak with him? You know what I mean? But at least I was able to express a genuine, like, just appreciation of a person,
Right,
so
right.
It's a good thing. And even now, like I actually have a meeting tomorrow with his management company because I might allow them to take me on as a client, you know what I mean? Because they've done so much for him.
Okay. Nice. That's
yeah.
Really,
so you guys got the exclusive on that one.
Yeah.
Nice.
Thank you so much.
Nice. Well, keep us informed and so we can check everything out.
Absolutely.
Well, T. Eric Monroe, we want to thank you for everything you've done for the culture. How does it feel being part of documenting something that's about to turn 50 years old?
It's shocking. Like, I didn't think about it being 50 years old. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to say it makes me feel old, but it makes me wonder, like, am I old? It's trippy because it's like during the time period that I was actively involved in it, I didn't think about how old the music culture was, but I realized, I think a few months ago when I was like in my friend's car and I happened to turn the radio station, come to find out they have a dedicated station to 90s hip hop. And I had to really think about that if someone's dedicating a radio station just to 90s hip hop, that's significant in terms of the longevity of the music and culture and also the marketability of the music and culture. And what it really made me understand is hip hop now is the new classic rock. So we have to really understand what it is that we have within this culture, that we are now, the Janis Joplins, the Jimi Hendrix, the Rolling Stones, the Beatles. Like, we have to own and hold this culture up and accountable, and you can't give it away for free because we have something here, you know what I mean, with the culture that it is. So it's like, it's an honor to be a part of the new classic rock and like staying ahead of it and being mindful, even in my talks and negotiations now, that it's not going away. Like, everyone's still buying into Jimi Hendrix. Everyone's still buying into anything that's on classic rock stations. This is now in an urban form of classic rock. You know what I mean? But it's not just urban, it's American culture. So we have to understand, like, we are classic rock now, and we have to hold ourselves at the same air of respect as classic rock.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry that I'm kind of laughing as you're saying that. It hasn't registered to me yet. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
yes.
I get it, and I know, but it's like you said. It's like, am I old? I just turned 50. You
right.
know what I mean?
Right. I'm right there with you.
I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. I feel great. I feel fine. So like, I'm listening to you say like, oh yeah, like with the classic rock and this and that. I'm like, damn, really? Like I'm still listening to you know what I mean? I'm still like stuck in that 80s, 90s, and I don't know if I can accept it yet.
It's what for me. I accept it for what it is.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I know that I'm not 21. I know I'm not 25. I know I'm not 35. You know, and it feels weird to finally own that and admit it. And I'm okay with it at this point. You know what I mean?
I'm not there. I'll get there.
I'm not saying I'm old. I just know that I'm not going to the club on a Friday night. I'm not. I'm not doing this. Like I'm not doing like that. What I would do from 21 to 34. I'm not doing that anymore. You know what I mean? So it's just like I gotta walk a different walk now. You know what I mean? But I respect what is because I was there. Like I was the mindless kid running around doing this mad energy 24/7. You know what I mean? Where it's like, all right, my legs hurts once in a while if I'm doing too much or whatever. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I still have the youthful joy because of hip hop and because of skateboarding. You know what I mean? I'm not going to get old as such.
That's what it is. That's you just said what I was trying to. That's exactly what it is.
Right. Yeah. Because I mean, look at Tony Hawk.
Right.
He's the most iconic example of youth and still going.
Right. And not to go and just to go back to Ricky Powell real quick, like that's how I kind of see myself like Ricky Powell. Not right. You know. But as far as like, I'll probably be like 80 years old. I'm still have my Yankee hat on.
Of course.
I'm still gonna be, you know. They're like, yo, look at this guy. Like,
it's a party.
This guy's like 80 years old, but that's gonna be me.
But you have to allow that to continue in you. You know what I mean? That's what keeps us young. Because it's like I looking back, thinking of Ricky Powell. Like I remember thinking and looking at him at certain moments of time where there's certain moments where depending on if he shaved, if he did this, he didn't look as old. But then there's other times I'm just like, holy shit, you know what I mean? But it's like I have to be conscious of that because I know for me, like if I have a week where I'm not going out in public, if I'm not being seen, I let my or whatever this little thing grows in. I get this little white hair, that little white hair. If I'm not conscious, it's like, you know, age can be seen. You know what I mean? But it's not that I'm denying my age, but at the same time, I just want to maintain my image. I want to maintain my youthfulness. And it's like I know what I look like when I don't maintain it. You know what I mean? And so it's like I have to be on ball because even now, like I have this very down period of time where I do a lot of event production. So the early in the year, it's always quiet for event production. So it's like I've been sitting around the house bored. So I literally got a part-time job doing, I don't want to say brainless work, but it's basically brainless work, but at least gets me out of the house. Like I'm not chewing into my savings. It covers all my costs, you know what I mean? And it keeps me active, you know, throughout the day where I'm active again. I'm losing weight because I'm on my feet all day, you know, walking around doing this, doing that. But it's fun, you know what I mean? I get to bounce around with people of all ages, talk to people, communicate. But it's just like that interacting of being around people keeps you going, you know what I mean? Because like, I could sit at home all day. Not that I'm worried about money, but it's just like I'm wasting a day not doing something productive.
Not being productive. Yeah,
right. So I can still do emails and I can, you know, obviously gratefully I can talk to you all, but it's like in between those moments of time, I still have to stay more active and just continue to move forward because it's like the more you interact, especially with the youth or the younger, it keeps you on top of your game because talking to someone that's in high school versus talking to someone that's in their 20s or 30s, it's a completely different conversation. So be able to talk to a high schooler or someone in their early 20s and have a conversation, whether it's about social media, about what issues that they see and perceive. I remember being in high school. I remember going to college for a quick minute and then like, this isn't for me. And then, you know, figuring out the New York game, but staying in communication with people, you know, within the 20 to the 30s, so long as you can, one thing, you know, that's also I found essential is if you can find a mentor in their 20s or 30s, they'll help keep you connected and they'll help keep you on point. You know what I mean? Like so often like, oh, the kids don't know shit. No, when we were 20s, we knew our shit. We just weren't given the latitude or leadway to really express ourselves and to build. But those who in their 20s did have that leadway. Think of Dave Mays, who started The Source. Think of Mark Echo, who started Echo Unlimited and went on to do Complex. No one got in their way. And look at the empires that they built. So you have to give the 20-year-olds the same respect, you know, and authority to do them because they're going to be the next XYZ. Like I've already eyed up the next Mark Echo or Dave Mays. It's a kid, Matthew, who owns Bowery Showroom, and his aesthetic of how he handles business, his business acumen, you know, the big brands are coming at him and after him to help them establish himself. And I told him, I was like, you have the same energy and aura and air because I know and worked around Mark Echo for so long. I said, you're the next generation to make that next complex. I've already identified the dude, you know what I mean? Like, and I have all the respect in the world for him.
Very well, very nice.
Bowery Showroom, like go check.
Yeah, I just wrote that down.
Yes, I'm telling you, Bowery Showroom, like he he has the focus, he has the business acumen, and he has the drive.
Very dope, very dope. Well, to Eric Monroe, once again, thank you very much. Oh, just real quick.
Yes.
I got to show this again, but so these are the books. You see, right?
Yes.
Everybody that's watching this, make sure you go out and get it. And real quick, I'll just show this because this is the picture we were talking about earlier.
Yes, Big Pun and Son at their house.
Big Pun and Son. So everybody, once again, T. Eric Monroe, thank you on behalf of myself and Sincere.
Thank you
Both the Hip Hop Guards. We appreciate everything you've done and continue to do.
You shout out your social media?
Yeah,
absolutely. Social media is at TDOTERIC at T.Eric written out. That's on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Yeah, those are the main ones.
Dope.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate the opportunity and time. It's a pleasure meeting you, Sincere. Rodney,
absolutely.
Thank you for linking it up. Anything I can do to help you as you continue, please don't be a stranger. Just reach out, and I'm here.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.